Okay, last point before we jump into the list is what I would call flash in the pan. And one of the things I've been trying to discuss with people close to me is the fact that if we actually see something go down, like a major event, to get to the store right away and stock up before everything's gone. We've all seen it in a number of the last hurricanes and blizzards, and actually, for some reason, I remember that there was like a big water main break somewhere on the East Coast recently, and that in all these situations, the bottled water and a lot of other goods empties out of the stores usually in less than 24 hours. So, this flash in the pan concept is that if you just rush to your store, if something happens, if there's another 911 event, or even if we see that North Korea nuke South Korea, those are like, it's a key thing that you should probably go to the store right then and just grab some stuff, just to have some extra, because the uncertainty of what that event's going to cascade into, you know, who knows. So, getting back to the point, so if you rush to the store with no particular plan in mind, you're most likely going to be overwhelmed, especially if the disaster is totally major. Like, let's say, knock on wood, a nuclear device goes off somewhere in the U.S. and just totally blows up a state, right? If you rush to the store, you'll be in panic mode, and you'll just wind up blindly spending money and grabbing a lot of stuff. And then you'll get home and you go, holy shit, what do I need 50 pounds of Crisco for? It was ridiculous. So the point is, right now, while things are calm, spend a little forethought, spend a little time, and create a list of the stores and the items you want to focus on. If you only have like a short period to get to the store and get some last minute stuff and get home. And in the best case scenario, you can break this list up among family members or friends. So, you could send one guy off to the gas station to fill up a few cans of 5-gallon gas cans. Somebody else can go hit the supermarket, etc., etc., etc. All right, we're on to the list. Okay, so the first two things on my list actually aren't on my list. Instead, they are just honorable mentions, and you should just keep them in mind. And you might want to add them to your list if you've got a lot of extra time on your hand and a lot of extra resources and money. The first thing is air. The fact of the matter is that most people think that water is the most important thing that you need, the number one thing, but it's really not. It's air. In a little more than 3 minutes, you're dead if you don't have air, if you can't breathe. But I see it's such a specific thing. If the air quality goes bad, I mean, you're talking about a major, toxic disaster of some sort. So I don't have air on my list, and I don't really put that as a prep thing. If you want to put it down on your list and go into gas masks and hazmat suits and all sorts of air filters and all this stuff, go right ahead. But I don't put that down on my standard prep list. The second honorable mention, I actually just found out about it today by watching AwakeAndDangerous's latest video, and he mentions bills. And the point of his video is that we're all thinking that some SHTF scenario is going to come down the pipe at some point, but the fact of the matter is our everyday bills and our monthly bills are 100% for sure coming down the pipe. So he says, he was saying that you have to consider that, and you have to really plan and make sure you have money to take care of that stuff, or else you're basically going to be out on the street and broke and unable to deal with anything before anything even starts. Very good point. Okay, so first up is water, and that's pretty self-explanatory, but basically, you're gonna need a crap load, and I mean a crap load, a lot more than you think. Actually, before I get into all the rest of this list, let me just point out that everybody's situation is a little different. Some people use municipal water, some people have wells, some people live in the mountains where the water is clean and good, and some people live in the suburbs where the water is not too good. So it's really hard to have a video where you're going to touch on everybody's situation exactly. So obviously I'm not doing that. I'm going to just break down some basics pretty much from my standpoint, and when I can, I'll comment about how some other people might do it, but you'll just have to apply a little bit of your own logic to all these different points. Okay, so back to water. Also, with all the categories that I'm going to rattle off here, again, these are the categories that I make my lists of prepping for. And I'm not really going to go into detail in all the different categories. I'm just going to rattle off like a basic description of it and maybe a tip or two, and that's it. In later videos, I'll probably break down different ones and, go into the specifics of any, particular good ways to, prep for that particular category or, whatever. Okay, so sorry. So water, you're going to need a crap load. You're going to need a lot more than what people are talking about in general, because you have your drinking water, which is going to sustain you, but then you have bathing, cooking, cleaning, water for your pets or your livestock and your plants. I mean, if you're trying to grow food, just think about the amount of water you need to water your plants, especially if you have a dry season. I mean, it's a ton of water. You want to focus on the ability to filter water, but then also you want to focus on, large capacity storage of water, and then, you have some general, 1 gallon and 5 gallon drinking water just stocked up. Next is food short term. I break food down into, what do I got here? Four categories. It's 4 separate categories because they're all pretty important. First one is for food short term. And food short term refers to everyday items that you're eating right now. And recently I heard someone use the term stock the stuff that you eat and eat the stuff that you stock, and that's 125% correct. If you stock a bunch of food that you don't eat and that's strictly survival food, I mean, it's perfectly fine to do that if you want to do, a few pounds of that stuff, and you think to yourself, well, if it's Mad Max, I'm not going to care, I'll be starving, I'll eat whatever, that's great. But you don't want to invest a substantial amount of money into stocking a pantry full of stuff that you really have no interest in eating, because the odds are you won't, eat it daily, and then it's more of a chance it'll go bad. And then if you do have to eat it in a shit hits the fan scenario, you're going to be miserable. So there's no reason to do that. Stock the stuff that you eat and eat the stuff that you stock, and constantly rotate in, new stuff. My personal view is that I want to pay more for better quality food. I know that a lot of it is a marketing gimmick, like when you do like the all natural and to some extent the organic and all this stuff. But for me, I'll err on the side of caution, and I'll give myself every single percentage, every single edge to stay healthy by eating, healthier foods and, whatever. If I have to pay $1 or so more for some pasta or something because it's organic, all wheat, good stuff, I don't have a problem with that. Okay, so next up is food long term. And the long term food is basically food that you go to after all your short term stuff is used up. So this is the stuff that you don't, typically eat on a day-to-day basis. It's basically your buckets of bulk food, buckets of rice, beans, etc., etc., etc. And again, this is stuff that you would have, more shelved away, and that's going to have much longer shelf life, 10 years, 15 years, or whatever. And it's the stuff you keep for extreme circumstances. Okay, next up is food sustainable, which is mainly your seeds. And, basically in a long-term SHTF scenario, you got to be able to grow it. One thing I will point out is that it is a total myth, in my view, that you can actually sustain yourself on a small garden. I mean, this isn't completely not true. I've got a pretty decent sized raised bed going, and then I've got a couple other plots of area growing. And, if you're starving in the street, if there's a total breakdown and the grocery stores are closed, having some nice garden space is certainly going to be a godsend, and it will definitely help you, survive during a horrible time. But, okay, first of all, gardening, growing vegetables, and growing food is really hard. It's a lot harder than most people think. There's a lot of problems, and it's very temperamental. You have a little too much water, your stuff can die off very easy, and not enough water, it can die off too easy. And there's bugs, and there's pests, and there's deer, and there's raccoon, and there's everything else, right? So even if you have enough room to plant enough stuff that you could actually eat and live off of, the odds are is that a lot of it's not going